Joy, you might need
And
to
we
give
know
her
how
the-
that goes.
You could just press the space bar.
What?
Just space bar while you say yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? That works?
Now.
Yeah, really, all this time.
Really?
I've
All
messed
this
it up?
time I've been messing it up?
And I, well, it's still showing on,
You were just unmuted.
okay.
Now hit it again.
The space
No.
bar?
Not
That
the
will
chat
also-
cast, the space.
That will also mute you.
Mute and unmute.
Now I'm mute. No, I'm not muted.
All right,
Press
stay
and
that
hold
way. Stay that way.
Press and hold.
Whenever you want to start.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Malkowski,
It's not here.
Ms. Joy,
Here. I got sorry.
It's gonna be that kind of night.
I'm with you. We look at each other like, who?
Mrs. Lebudzik,
Here.
Mrs. Lammel,
Here.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Here.
Mrs. Sulzer.
Here. It's gonna be that kind of night.
Pledge to the flag.
Okay, so please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we don't have any,
Yes.
huh?
We have two yes.
Who? And what?
And
Oh, okay, so we do have two guests. Dr. Mondonia, even though he's coming here to do something for us, he qualifies as a guest. And then Tiffany Egan is a guest tonight. On a very kind of sad occasion. Okay, that's it?
We have public participation
Are you participating?
later.
Later. Are you participating at all?
No.
Okay. So no awards and
Yes,
recognitions?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yep. All right, if you want to go ahead and mute yourself.
You know, you guys need to make up your minds what you have to do here. What do you say?
So we did want to recognize someone in the audience this evening. Mrs. Tiffany Egan has resigned her position on the board after serving the students and the family and the whole community of Chicago Ridge for the last 8 years. And we want to thank you for everything that you've done for these schools and for the students. And we just have a small token that I would like to give you. And again, thank you for all of the tireless hours you've put in for our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
The board is in good hands, so
So on behalf of the board, we wanted to
thank you.
give you that and give you this, which I was told to tell you is very fragile.
Okay, I think I know.
Yes.
I
And
didn't think I would ever get one.
actually, you might not, because this will eventually go in there.
Oh,
So,
okay.
all right.
Thank you, everybody, and you're in good hands, and the district is in fantastic shape, so I have zero regrets, and I have enjoyed every single moment with all of you on the board and bringing some people on, and do great things. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. You'll be missed. We'll miss you.
We'll see you.
Of course.
Okay. Dr. Madonna is now.
Good. Well, good evening to all. Excited to be back here again to start off our strategic long-range planning session. What I want to do is just explain what our outcomes are going to be for this evening. We're going to start off, I'm going to be playing our PowerPoint that you see up there. And it will first of all explain our process for the benefit of board members who have not been through the process before. So that'll be one piece, and you can ask any questions that you may have regarding our process. And then I'm going to give you feedback on the data that I collected regarding core values. I'm going to give you that information. And then we're going to round out our evening with our main exercise of identifying the focus areas of study for the strategic planning. So here, I'll give everyone a calendar. I'll give it to you and you can just pass it to the left. That would be great. What I've done is highlight in yellow the two areas on the calendar where we still have to identify dates. So something you might want to think about as you look in your calendars. Obviously, this is a very important evening. We've already established September 21st. But at some point, we're going to need to identify when we're having 2 days for the community committee. That sometimes is districts choose Friday evening and Saturday morning. Other districts do 2 evenings in a row, and that's up to the board. So something you should think about as we move forward. So I will leave that calendar with you, and then we can have you look at dates as we move forward. So if you look at the PowerPoint that's up on the screen there, I first of all want to give you a little bit of an overview of what the benefits are of strategic long-range planning. I have done so many of these, and I wish you could be a fly on the wall when I'm at the meeting with the stakeholders. When we get all these people together from our community, they are so excited and such flag wavers for the district for the process they've just engaged themselves in, and feel like they just want to go out and shout to the world the wonderful things that you're doing. And so I look forward to that happening again. So in looking at this slide and talking about the benefits, number one, it's an excellent planning tool for the next 5 years. And I think you know that based on our last plan. It's also an outstanding public relations experience. There will never be another time when you will be able to connect with stakeholders the way you will connect with them during this process. So I think that's such a huge piece. Board members will actually sit down with stakeholders. They'll get to know you and you know them. And you will plan together. And think about it, when would you ever have the opportunity to do that? Probably never. It's rare. So we're very excited about that. This process also showcases the leadership of the board and the superintendent. And I like that. I'm a facilitator, but you're the leaders. And we emphasize that the board is the person leading this process. And so we make that very, very clear. And the other piece is it has accountability at all levels. So I think that's important as well. Here are the components of the strategic plan, mission and vision statements, which I know you've reviewed, and I think you feel pretty comfortable with the statements that you have now. Identification of core values, which we just went through that exercise, and I'm going to give you the results of that data tonight for you to review, study, and affirm. And then the development of the focus areas of study, which is what we're doing tonight, okay? Then there'll be an assessment and an annual evaluation component. So we will assess and find out input from people on how they feel about the focus areas of study and what they think are important for the next 5 years. And then one of the beauties of our plan, which boards are thrilled about, is the fact that I come back every year and we assemble that community committee again and we report out outcomes. So we have a 12-month benchmark for progress. And then we give them a sneak preview of what's coming in the next 12 months. And the boards typically love that piece because in many districts, they develop a 5-year plan and it sits on the shelf. And then 5 years rolls around and they say, well, what have we done? So this keeps it active, it keeps it alive, and keeps it formidable. So then we will develop our strategic goals and we will also develop action plans to achieve those goals. So those are the components. And now I quickly want to go over all of these. Core values, we've already discussed via my email. This is a central belief clearly understood and shared by every member of the school community. And many districts, what they do is they actually get a graphic let's say it's a circle. And in each segment of the circle, they'll put a value, and then they'll put like your district number in the middle, CR 127.5, and it becomes like a logo too, which is very cool, which then emulates all the work that you're doing. These are the core values, or what is clearly understood and shared by every member of the school community. So something to think about. What we're doing tonight is developing the focus areas of study. And these are very important and represent the foundation of our planning. Now, what's interesting about that is that the board is the ultimate authority in any school district. And so it should be up to the board to set the focus of what the planning should be. And that's what we're doing here tonight. You're setting the focus. Once you give us the focus, then we're going to move forward and build off of that, collaborate with our community, collect input, develop our goals and our action plans, and end up with our full 5-year strategic plan. So that's what we're doing tonight. And this will be a fun experience, and we'll explain that process after we finish going through the different steps here of strategic planning. The evaluation component, once the focus areas of study are developed, then what I will do is take that information, usually 5 or 6 focus areas, and I will build a survey off of it. And I'll put that together. And what I will do then, once that's completed, and of course, typically I go back and forth with the superintendent with the refinement of that survey, and we will continue, both Adam and I will continue to do that again. But then we will put that survey out to the community via the webpage. We can also make paper copies if you'd like them in libraries if people don't have internet access, computer access. And the survey will not be long, because if you make it too long, people don't fill it out. But we would like to have input from people about how they feel we should move forward in the next 5 years in these focus areas of study. Okay, so that's an evaluation component. Once the survey is complete, then I will disaggregate the data and put it into a summarization. And then that will be on every table when we do the stakeholder meetings, the 2 days of stakeholder meetings, to give people feedback from the community on the 5 focus areas of study. And then the other evaluative component is the annual review, which I've already referenced, that we do every year once we complete our plan. Again, to report out progress after every 12 months. Our whole process is data-driven. The survey is data-driven. The action plans are data-driven. We're in an era of data, and we use data. And so here we will use it again in our process also. This piece is a piece that I think is really important. And it's one where I spend some time with the community committee, and I will with you as well, to give you an overview of what is best practice in the field. Because I think what we have to understand is that many of the people in our committee are not educators. So they really don't know what's best practice in the field. And sometimes it's really helpful for them to have an overview of what some of that is. For example, like the importance of infusing technology into instructional delivery. Very important, because there's no career that a child's going to enter at some point in their life that won't be technology driven. So it's important for them to understand technology, and it's also a driver for them to learn, because as you know, they're used to a technological world. So we certainly will provide that orientation. Committee compositions. The committee, what we will do is have school community members, parents, teachers, administrators, school board members, And what we will do is, I always recommend to the board and the superintendent that they tap on the shoulder for those they think that would be good participants on our committee. And that would be, for example, the leaders of your parent organizations, municipal officials, maybe someone from Richards as a representative, since you feed into Richards. You know, that's another good person you'd want to tap on the shoulder. Maybe a village trustee. You know, there's certain people that I think would be honored to participate. And I think we did that last time too. And the Chicago Ridge community was very engaged and willing to participate in that ring. And after that, we can put out a notice for volunteers. And what we ask them to do is to fill out a sheet about their background so that we can best match them to the focus areas. Because once we assemble the whole committee, they're going to be broken up into sub-focus area groups. So, and then you will have the option of either letting all those people, anyone who applies, depending on the number, of course, onto the committee, or you can select off of there those that best match your focus areas. That's a decision that the board has to make. What you need to understand, however, is the more people you have, the more you have in the focus area groups. So for example, if you have 5 focus areas and you have 50 people, there are 10 people then in each of those. So something to think about as you look at how to set a number as to where that should be. Okay, so something to think about that way as well. Now, next. All right, now we're on. That's weird, isn't it?
It is. It's doing the same on mine.
Why would it do that? Oh, okay. Well, it went to the next slide, so that's the main thing. So when we do the community committee, what we recommend is that we have 1 or 2 board members at every table of the focus area tables and an administrator at each of the focus area tables. And there are 2 roles that the board members and the administrators carry. The first is they are a leader or facilitator at that local focus area level, or they're a data keeper. And it doesn't matter who is who. You can be a board member, be the data keeper, and the administrator be the spokesperson, or the reverse, whatever you have a comfort zone with. But here is where you're going to really see where you're going to connect with your community. And so what we're going to do then is, before we have our 2 days of our committee, we're going to have a special board meeting, and I'm going to train and orient the administrators and the board into those roles. So in other words, things like, how do you bring people to consensus? What do you do with the person who's not talking or giving input at all? What do you do with the person who's controlling the conversation? What do you do in what your task will be? And then we'll round out that evening with a role play where you actually do it. So you are going to be 100% comfortable going into our 2 days of planning. And for those that went through before, you'll recall that it went very smoothly as we went through the 2 days of our work. So that's one of the yellow highlighted areas on your calendar where we need a date. Okay, and then the other one is the 2 days of planning. Okay, this is a logo that we've used in the past, and we used to say it's Team 1275. Team standing for Together, Expecting and Achieving More. I think it's a great acronym that reflects how we feel. And so, something to think about. Now, the time frame of the process, and I started to share this with you at the beginning of our conversation. Typically, we do it in 2 days. Friday evening, Saturday morning is one format. It's a total of 7 hours. So, for example, if it's Friday evening, it's 6 to 9 p.m. and Saturday morning from 8 to noon. Or you can do 3.5 hours, 2 evenings in a row. That's another option, depending on what you think best fits your needs. I will tell you this, that I never go over. Never. In all the strategic plans I've done, I never go over. And this will be no exception because I value people's time and I'm not going to have them sitting there way past their committed time frame. So I guarantee that will once again happen here as well. So once you do the 2 days, then the board will consider the input from the committee as we move forward. Now I want to talk to you about the committee process. Exactly what does the committee do? Well, the results of the survey of all constituent groups will be tabulated and ready for planning on each table. So if we have 5 or 6 focus areas, there'll be 5 or 6 individual tables. Everybody who's on the committee will be assigned to a table that best fits their background. And the reason we do that is because human nature being what it is, if you let people just go to tables, they'll gravitate to tables where they know people, not necessarily where it's best for planning. So that's the reason that we do that. Once the focus area tables are set, then the first charge of that group will be to identify a 5-item prioritized list of what's the most important items in the category. So let's give you an example. If one of the focus areas of study is finance and remaining fiscally stable, I'm just making that up, okay? Then your group, if you're in the finance group, you are going to make up a 5-item prioritized list. Most important, number 1, the least important, number 5, of what's important for planning in that area for the next 5 years. So the way we do that is by going around the table and asking people for their input. And so as you're going around the table, the data keeper is taking notes. And then you're going to, once you go around the table, you're going to categorize those notes. You know, like for example, if we use finance as the example, you know, and they're talking about internal controls, we know that's the category. Or if we're talking about fiscal management, so there's different categories. And then once you have established the categories within finance, then you have to vote as a group. What's number 1, what's number 2, what's 3, 4, and 5. And you'll write that in a sentence. So that's a 90-minute endeavor on day 1. So you will have 5 sentences here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 being the most important, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So there'll be an easel next to each table. And at every table will be a computer. And we'll have a Google Docs document on there. And we will ask the recorder to type in those 5-item prioritized list. Also put it up here on the easel. Okay. Now, once that's complete, that's typically the end of day 1. And then what we do is we run off a copy of everybody's list. Because when you do a Google Docs document, it all gets infused into one document. You're all typing off the same one. So then we'll print that out and we'll give everybody a copy. Now we go to day 2. And the exercise on day 2 will be to look at everybody else's 5-item prioritized list. So again, using the finance group as an example, you're not going to look at your list because you've already done your list, but you're going to look at the other 4 lists. You know, it might be curriculum, it might be technology, you know, whatever it might be, climate, culture, PR in the community. I mean, there's many, many different focus areas. And from your vantage point, finance group, in this example, you're gonna reprioritize maybe their lists. So now the exercise will probably take about another, probably 60 minutes. And so let's say you're in finance and you're looking at curriculum, if that's an area, okay? And curriculum may have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you may go, I don't think so. I think it's 3, 4, 5, 1. So once that's complete, then every easel will have 5 columns written on it right here. 5 columns. And then going this way are the person's 5-item prioritized list. So now I facilitate a massive hour-and-a-half facilitation where we integrate all the input that we've received. And here's how it works. So I'll ask the spokesperson of all 5 groups to come up to this easel. And using this as the finance easel, assuming this is it. Okay. And I'll say, okay, I want you, curriculum, who's the curriculum rep? I raise my hand. He goes, okay, curriculum, you have prioritized the 5 items on finance. List your numbers in the left-hand column here and tell me why. And they'll say, well, you made number 1, number 3, why? They said, well, here's the reason why. And I'll turn around and say, okay, finance, how do you respond to that? And they'll explain why they made 1, 1, and the other group will explain why they made a 3. And what you'll see is something really beautiful. Some of the finance people go, oh my gosh, that point never even came up at our table. That's a great idea. And they'll be taking notes about all these recommendations. So at the end of that facilitation, each easel has 5 columns of numbers for the 5 items that are prioritized. So you easily can go across and see how many feel this is 1, how many feel this is 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, also, that group is going to take note of verbiage recommendations, and so, and at the end, what we're going to do is we are going to take and about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever, for each group to bring the data together from what they just heard in this massive facilitation. And so then there'll be 5 sticky, sticky notes, thank you. 5 sticky notes at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so at the end, they will finally label which is 1, which is 2, which is 3, which is 4, and which is 5. And then they'll make any changes in verbiage that they saw that they thought was formidable. And so then we have the final exercise of the 2 nights where each focus area is a color. Finance might be green and curriculum might be red or whatever. And what we do is we have each person get an envelope, assuming there are 5 focus areas as my example, with 10 self-adhesive circular dots, 2 of each color. And then everybody takes a coffee break and stands up, walks around to all the easels, and we ask them to say, okay, now you personally vote for your number 1 and your number 2 priority in each group. And the irony of that is, it's a great, people love doing that because it's tactile. They love it. And at least that's been my experience. And so the top 2 vote getters are our first 2 goals for our strategic plan. So we have 5 areas, we have 2 goals in each, and that makes 10 goals, okay? And the other 3 goals are the depth of our plan. As we do annual reviews, we achieve one, we can move up the next one, and the next one, and then the next one, as we go through the annual reviews. Now, the irony of it all is 98% of the time, it exactly matches what the final assessment of 1 and 2 was. But that's probably because we just had an hour and a half massive discussion about this whole thing. So that part does not surprise me. But that works quite well. And then once that's complete, and actually we went through this, okay, we did this. Once that's complete, then I'm going to take the top 2 goals in each of the areas and polish the verbiage, because you know they're raw verbiage. Polish it up. And then the administrative team's responsibility will be to write goals for 2 to 3 not goals, action plans for each goal. 2 to 3 action plans for each goal. And we ask the administrators to do that because they're the ones that have to do the work. So they're the one held accountable and have to report out every 12 months. So it only makes sense that they do this. And I have a template that they can use to develop the action plans. And that works quite well. Once that's complete, then I'll put it into a brochure, a base template brochure. And then we, according to our calendar, will be presenting that final product or that recommendation to the board in January of 2022 for the 22 through 27 plan. Now, throughout this whole process, it's always emphasized to everyone that this is a recommendation to the board. You are the ultimate authority. You are the final approval. We never, ever say it's not appropriate. That what we develop here is slam dunk. It usually is, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is. So we have to make that clear. The board is the ultimate authority and they have the final vote on the plan. That's the way it should be. So here's our calendar. You have that, so I won't go over that again. There are 3 sides of the calendar. And I'm open to any questions you have about our process. I know it's a little complex if you haven't been through it before. And a lot of people say, oh, is he really going to achieve all this? Yeah, we do. We really do. And it's a wonderful process. You'll love it.
I just want to reassure the new members of the board that all of our administrators have been through this process and they're very helpful during the strategic planning. You've been through it, I've been through it. You've got the tail end of it, just with us. But it is well worthwhile. We've had a good turnout for at least the first one.
Yes.
And it's worked out well. I hope we can get a lot of people back again. And it goes like exactly how Bob said it does. You know, it really works out well. And community members are not afraid of doing their mouths.
No, it's good. And you know, and the thing is that throughout the whole time with the community committee, I am both Adam and I will be moving from table to, we're constantly moving to facilitate, help answer questions. If you run into a dilemma, we will not be idle. We're going to be all over the place. And again, that's a good thing because it connects the superintendent also with the stakeholders. So that's an important thing too.
And teachers brings also.
Yes.
They even bring it, so that's good.
Are there goals from
The last round that people feel like
they
they would want to carry over?
They weren't accomplished, I assume there's a brochures online.
Yeah, when we have the template with the goals,
Right.
one that has been accomplished from the first year and things that have continued. But again, we will have administrators at each of those tables that can be part of that conversation, but I would also want to hear kind of where we're at now. And again, I think that's something that goes back to the final authority, that if we see, well, no, this is one we really wanted to accomplish, we still haven't gotten to, well, when we talk about it, that's something we need to talk about.
Well, I think you bring up a good point with that. Tirzah, you want to make your point first?
Well, I was gonna say, the thing that I thought was the most interesting, not hardest, was this first meeting was trying to figure out what were our first 5.
Yep.
Because once you figure out what's really important, like what we had to focus, I remember the last time we talked about finance. Finance is important, but you know what? We have to, I personally think we need to be more either specific or bridge something else than what we did at finance. I think that maybe we should elaborate it into employment and things, you know what I mean? And getting people into this thing, because before, we were like slam dunk, you know, like types of things like that. And some things, I think, like curriculum was just such a huge thing. So I think that was the hardest part for me, not being in education, to know where to go. But once you figure out those 5, then it's so much easier. I don't know how to explain it. You have to have like, you know, just like like you're going on a trip, you need to have like 5 stops. Which are the 5 stops you want to go? And then once you get to that stop, what are you gonna do in each stop? You know, I mean, if you think about it that way, it definitely does a lot. It's amazing.
And I think to your point, what was relevant 5 years ago may not be relevant now. You know, I mean, so maybe that's not
Or
true
just
now.
tweaks a little more.
Exactly. And our plan does what every plan should do, which is overplan. You know, same like in teaching, we don't never underplan, we always overplan it if you're a good teacher. So to the point is, and this brings up your point, if there's anything, because rarely do districts get through all 5 because there's so much involved in all of them. But sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So if there's something that's still relevant 5 years later, it gets infused into this discussion we're going to have tonight. It gets put up on these boards and categorized into the focus areas, and it resurfaces. Because we have to reestablish whether it's still relevant, because it's 5 years ago. You know, things have changed in 5 years. Like, you know, a lot of the districts right now, as you probably know, I've done administrator academies for administrators to recertify them. I've done, I think, 4 of them for your team. But the hottest one around right now is a new one that I have on climate and culture. How to keep the morale up in light of COVID. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many districts are struggling with that. Student climate, student satisfaction, teacher satisfaction, parent. Let's go down the list. It's huge. And we have more and more districts. So was this relevant 5 years ago? Well, yeah, it probably was, but not like it is now, because we just came off this tough year. So, you know, it's been impacted a lot.
It was something 5 years ago, but it was just a matter of us like being in the community. I mean, it sounds
Exactly.
The focus was getting on, you know, like tweeting, you know, and doing that, you know what I mean, just getting out in the community, whereas like this is something different.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? Yes.
So you give a survey out to the community.
Yes.
Is there any other data you guys use besides that for the process?
Well, yeah, the data is going to be heavily collected at the 2 day for 7 hours during those 2 days. You'll see a lot of data and feedback come back. And that's the ones that are going to be recorded at each of those 5 tables.
Okay.
Yeah, and that'll be logged also on a Google document. So you'll have that as well.
Okay.
And another thing I tell the committee is, we're giving you the survey data, not for you to plan the plan of the survey, because that would be insulting to the 50 or 60 people we invited for the day, meaning their input doesn't mean anything. What it means is it's one piece of data, because we got all the rest of this data coming when we're having this discussion. So it'll be very relevant. So yes, there is a lot of data that will be accumulated. Good question.
Is there any student data that comes in?
Yes, students, you can have students take the survey. Yeah, oh yeah. Matter of fact, what we do sometimes in some districts is as they fill it out, they check how they're connected to the district. So, you know, parent, teacher, you know, community member, student, you know, whatever. You could do that again, you know, if you want to see what body or what groups, how they responded, you could do that.
Yeah. And Bobby, before you move on, one of the things that I appreciate a lot about this process, having done strategic plans in other districts and seeing all this work put in by the board, all this work put in by the community, then you get a nice shiny binder, and you don't look at it other than to pull it out and just say, hey, look what we did. It's such a fluid document that we work on as an administrative team. The board knows that we bring it every January, kind of as a midpoint check. We bring it again in June to have it approved in July. And so it is a living, breathing document, which is so much different than other plans that I've been a part of. And I just know, even when I was coming into the district and just having that common thread to go from one set of leadership to the next, and making sure that people still know what's really important, what is the focus for the district. So it's something I really appreciate.
And if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure Bob, you're aware,
Yes.
we accomplished just most of our
I
stuff.
think you did. And as we went on, like original like sub things that you were trying to do.
Yes.
And we didn't just say we're good and just stop, but it would move on for the next.
Gas attached to that, so you took care of that, and now because of all this extra COVID money and stuff, our roof's already done.
Right, that's great.
We didn't plan on doing for a few years. yet.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, just having, you know, our architects come in and do all that type
Yeah.
of stuff, that was one of the main things that
Mhm.
came from the strategic plan. I'm like, we have old buildings, we need to do something. I was like, okay, where do we start? Good to see where we're at. and where we're going.
so
that was
between
a
doing the
huge one.
strategic plan
Mhm.
and then combining it with what Pat does, you know.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and we, I think, compared to some districts, we're pretty much ahead of the game most of the time. We're not
Sure.
perfect, and there's.
No, and that's commendable.
But we're ahead of the game.
I mean, I thoroughly enjoy doing this. You'll probably sense my enthusiasm because I know I'm very enthusiastic about it.
Who gets into it?
I really do get into it. I've done since 2009, I have done 45 plans. I've done the high school, I've done them in elementary. I did HF, I did Homewood 153. I've done them in Lincolnshire, I've done them in Libertyville, I've done them in Hillside, I've done them in Riverside. So I've been kind of all over, and I just know how successful the process is for districts. So I'm encouraged. You've experienced it, so it's a little tougher to sell it to someone who's never done it, saying, "Oh, this sounds overwhelming. How are we going to do this?" But it works.
And it works because specific things are pinpointed and we try and measure to what's first, second, third to get done. So when very often one thing balances off the other,
Right.
so it's.
And my perfect example, I have to share this one with you, the power of the strategic planning process is Lincoln Line. Everybody's heard of Lincoln Line, high school. And if you go back 5 years ago, that's when they were having all this turmoil and they were financially on the cliff. And, they were threatening to close the school. Remember all that? Then they closed the school and all the parents were angry. And they were all wanting to run for the board. I mean, they'd be at every board meeting screaming and yelling at the board and saying, we're going to come on the board and we're going to reopen our school and we're going to fire the superintendent. Okay, that sets the stage. So then we did a strategic plan for them. And every board member was at those tables. Do you know at the end of that, when they saw all the goals and the focus and got to know all those board members, every one of those board members are reelected. Every incumbent, because they're serious about turning this around. And none of those other people won. So it just shows you, and today they're in great shape. And it's 5 years later. And actually, we're supposed to start a second plan there in January. So that just shows you the power of it. And I think it'll work well for you too. Now, one thing that I've done that I want to share with you tonight is for my clients, I put together a pop tune clip. It's only 2 minutes, and we're going to play it for you. It's a great PR thing. You can put it on your website, and it just gives you a quick 2-minute overview of the process for anyone who's thinking of being on the committee and saying, well, gee, what's this all about? So I'd like you to take a look at it. It's only 2 minutes. Pictures from our last plan.
Oh, yeah, there's Tiffany.
There's Tiffany. All the pictures that are meeting the previous plan. that slide of an easel. There you go. It's a little clip, just, it's only 2 minutes long, but sometimes, people thinking about it, they go, hey, I'm gonna click on this and see what it's like. So you can use that. I've made that for you. And your tech person, when we start to recruit for the committee, which should be pretty soon. We should start that right away because it'll take a while. Might want to put that onto your website next to, if you're interested, click on here and fill out the form and please join us kind of thing. Please look at our vouchers list. So something to think about.
I think it would only behoove the process of putting that on to maybe assure community members that the COVID-19 standards are followed. I think that there's a lot of concern, people not wearing their mask properly or doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that, you're being in a large group. I think that that is something that has to be clear to people who want to be involved, as well as people who are concerned about safety measures. So
I think that's an
I think that would be important to put with that if it's something that a community member wants to be a part of, that, we as the district are gonna uphold the rules that people in meetings. I don't know
Sure.
I don't know that there's a limit in size right now, but if people are eating, it has to be 6 feet apart. So, and also that people have their masks on properly.
Right. And I think that's an excellent point. And in fact, we can put that right on the sheet they're filling out to be on the committee, and they can sign off on it. I'm happy to conform with COVID restrictions and wearing masks during, something that'd be great, because then you can always say, you agree. So that's an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so now I just want to switch to core values a minute before we get into our exercise, because as you know, I sent in everybody an email and asked for your input on 7, your top 7. I gave you a whole list of about 55 or something like that on this list. Didn't restrict you from that list, but just to generate your thinking about what's important for core values. And again, here was the data that came out of it. I looked at things that people had in common when I picked it. In other words, it was on more than one list. And what came up was collaborative, inclusive, student-centered, student safety, high expectations, and everyone can learn. So that's what I came up with based on the data that I received back from you. So, and again, you see, I kind of put this in a little bit of a light bulb is a bright idea, but again, you can do a circle. You can go on your, on your PR, newsletters and so forth. It's a nice little, almost like a logo, and it represents you, and it represents the district and what your beliefs are for the school community. So the question I have is I'm interested in your feedback on the result of the data. We have 2 choices. We can affirm these, or I can take everyone that responded and list all that they wrote, and you can repick 7 out of that list, or you can go with this list, whatever you prefer. Thoughts, input?
Is student safety a concern? That would be a,
I think.
are we talking COVID safety?
I think this is more core values, like making sure it's something we're always looking at instead of what would be a concern.
I see.
Yeah. So, and I think it's not just in COVID times, but any times. Right.
I know, I feel the same thing with that student safety. I know, I don't know.
It kind of needs to be their central, in my opinion.
Inclusive and everyone can learn seems a little redundant.
Mm-hmm.
Unless,
Well, it depends. Are you
I guess, maybe my
inclusive
perspective.
meaning? It depends on your definition for inclusive.
Oh, if you're talking about inclusive, like the community.
That's one way of looking at it. You can talk about
Inclusive with students.
inclusion
Yeah.
for special needs students
Well, all
infused into
students.
regular ed settings.
Yes,
That's another
diversity,
inclusion.
LGBTQ,
Well, anything.
neurotypical,
Yes.
yeah, just
It's more broad.
Yeah.
So it would take in a number of things if it's written that way.
Yeah.
If it says inclusion, it would lean more towards special ed, I think. We use that word. But inclusive would take, well, like what you're referencing. Yeah. So here's a thought. Maybe you want to look at that. I think Adam ran off a copy of this for you in the PowerPoint. I think they're listed on one of those pages, correct? This slide should be on one of those pages, I think. Okay, so you want to look at it and think about it. And when we meet next time, we can affirm it. We don't have to affirm it tonight. That's up to you.
I'd like to see what everyone put. Didn't you say that was an option?
Yeah,
I'd like to see that.
we can do that. So why don't we do this? You want to take a look at it, and then I can email you all that was submitted. You want to do that? Would that be okay? Okay, and then from there you can decide whether you want to retain these or if you want to look at something else or whatever.
And did you see these first?
I saw this,
You
when
saw
you sent it
this?
to me yesterday.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So tomorrow I'll make up a list and email that out to you.
And is there
Everyone's
usually 6 of them? Is that a magic number or
No,
can it differ?
no. It could be anywhere from 5 to 7. Just, it's whatever you want it to be. Exactly. So I think we had, out of 8, I think we had 5 responses. We had 5 responses out of 8. So if anyone else wants to add their point, please feel free to do so. So, okay. Sounds good? Okay. All right, so now let's go on to the next one and let's talk about what we're going to do tonight. So we're going to do this all important focus areas of study. And this is really important. And then I want to go over the process with you tonight. This is truly a brainstorm session. So I want to hear from all of you about things that you think are important for this district for the next 5 years. And what I'm going to do is, as you mentioned them, I'm going to run around the room and put them on these charts. And what I'm going to do is be categorizing them. And so it's very important that your input is considered. Every single board member's input is extremely valuable. And then once we finish and we've exhausted all of the brainstorming session, then we'll put category heads on how we divided these up. Does that make sense? So, so again, we also then, if we have more than 5 or 6, let's say we have 8 categories, then we'll have to have a discussion about prioritization. What is the most important? What are your top 5 or top 6? Because obviously we couldn't have 8 because then you'd end up with 16 goals. And then when you have your community committee, you probably only have 4 or 5 people at the table. It wouldn't really fly very well. So we have to then prioritize. And then at the end of the evening, we'll have a focus area study. So now at the end of the evening, I will take with my iPad a photograph of each easel. And then I will type it all up. And I will give them to, we will give those to every board member and administrator. So the reason why I'm doing that is because I want you to know that your input is recorded and valuable. But the other thing I think is important is you at these tables know what your board members have noted under that focus area. Now that doesn't mean you drive that at the table. That's not what I mean. At the focus area table, you want them to freely give their own input. But if something doesn't come up that you know the board member was thinking about under that category, the facilitator could say, could you give me your input on what do you think about this? And then boom, boom, boom. You know, it would be nice to just see what they would say about it. Because obviously it was a concern of the board. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before we begin? Anyone? Okay, let me get my magic marker. And I'll be ready. Okay, who'd like to start? Anything you think of the next 5 years for this district?
Technology is so.
Okay,
Yeah. There's always needs to be updated or improved or changed.
and what was that on technology?
Updating, change, improve.
Okay.
I mean, it's always, every year there's something new. I mean, we did a lot this year with that. I feel like there are leaps and bounds from going to not one-to-one to one-on-one, one fell swoop, so. I
Right.
don't know if it's just updating technology, but just
Getting
integrating.
people being better trained and integrating
Such
technology and
integration.
curriculum in a better way.
And just having a better face of technology, I feel like our webpage is very
Oh,
unuser friendly,
Yeah,
hard to navigate,
yeah. And it's interesting because,
unorganized, yeah.
you know, I mean, when your kids are little, you don't really, and it's interesting. It's like managing back was coming back from home or when you can explain it, was just interesting, like, I thought these kids would like it from technology. I was surprised.
Okay, you guys got those? Who else?
I think the climate can have some work done to it.
Which climate? Like, community climate or in
School climate? Staff climate.
staff climate or student climate?
All together, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I think one is more important than the other. But I suppose that's too broad.
Well, no, you can break it down
Yeah.
under that. I mean, we have student climate, staff climate, administrative climate, board climate, community climate. I mean, kind of any of those, parent climate,
Yeah.
which is all satisfaction. Climate, the difference between climate and culture is climate is satisfaction. So you got student satisfaction, parent satisfaction, teacher satisfaction, board satisfaction, community satisfaction. Culture is expectation. When you come to this district, what do students expect? It's set the expectation. In other words, when you come here, you're going to learn. That's the expectation. And if there's one thing that I wish for every district to have, it's a culture. It's a culture of continuous improvement. And we always want to get better. There is no zenith point of achievement. We are always can get better. I don't care how good you are, you can always get better. You can always still learn. Lifelong learners, exactly. Now that's culture. An example I always use, well, I'm not a New York Yankees fan, but the culture of the New York Yankees is they're winners. You know, you got Babe Ruth, Ricky Mantle, all this history that, and they may be a crummy team right now. I mean, they're not going to win their division, but they're still considered, ooh, the Yankees. And that's what we want the culture here. We want a continuous improvement of what the expectation is of community. That's culture. Climate is satisfaction, but you bring up a good point. So we can say enhance all climate. You want to leave it broad?
Yeah,
You want to leave it broad?
I think so.
Okay.
When you have high expectations on here, one of the core values that I was really concerned about was integrity,
Yes.
based on the integration of mass amounts of technology and cell phone usage. And so I worry about student integrity. And so that's just a focus area that I was thinking about. Does that, in your mind, go under high expectations then?
Yes, it could be. Yes, you could infuse it under there. Yes.
That's what I was just.
Yeah. No, but you bring up a
When
good
you
point.
said climate and you said expectations, that there's an expectation you walk in, like, I feel like having integrity for the work that you present is part of
That's a
it. So,
culture.
Yeah, that's what I meant for culture.
Yeah, that's a culture.
Okay.
So
And maybe we need to have some.
were you suggesting a culture item or not?
Possibly,
Well,
yeah,
which
that's
is-
what I was trying to,
Yeah.
like, make the connection, I assume, that there's a, just a cultural idea of a level of integrity.
Culture enhancement or something like that?
Yeah.
Let's put integrity. You mentioned student integrity, so what is that? Okay.
I'm gonna go with social emotional well-being of students and staff.
Yeah, I see how it's.
Of students and staff, did you say?
Yes.
Just been too much going on with. What about the idea of inclusiveness, not for the special ed realm, but inclusiveness for culture and different types of people in general, like a standpoint to educate, you know, acceptance of people who are of different cultures in the community, diversity, but not just diversity on a cultural level, but diversity on all levels. So maybe, you know, there is this kind of moving over to, you know, the idea of people who are transgender, like having some focus on that, on, you know, we have kids who are at that point of just the next level of acceptance, but not only that, but also for just cultural norms and values. I know that a lot of places are not only training staff in how to identify and accept different cultures in the community and their customs and tradition, but also students. I feel like we have a massive population of students who are EL, you know, English language learners, and to help other kids understand and be aware and how to, you know, function, and also to understand different traditions that go on in other cultures.
Okay.
I'm gonna disagree with that all the way across the board, because it has been around since I was teaching here, and it's 20 years ago, so. Oh, yeah, the kids get along fantastically, you get a few here and there, but even when I was teaching here and my two youngest kids were here, people were very accepting. It was rare that you saw that type of adverse reaction to other cultures and stuff.
I never mentioned adverse reaction. I mentioned that I think that it's a focus that people should be focusing on. And if you
But if it's
are,
already happening.
I don't know that it's already happening, because I have been to pre-K meetings and other things and things where I felt like there was tension with community members and even kids. So I just feel like I go to the parks and I see kids playing separately all the time. I'm just trying to see that kids can get an understanding of each other. Instead of, you know, instead of just being curious, like an understanding of each other. That's all.
Maybe differences is the word.
Yeah, differences in different people to have an understanding.
Differences.
I think it's not even just, I don't even think it's just culture. I think it's people are so focused on what they're doing in their own lives. They don't think about like what other things are that, like, maybe you were from, you know, a single mom and you're somebody from a blended family, different things like that, because you would be surprised how many people are very judgmental when, you know, I can't even example a long time ago, but my sister, none of her friends could come over because my dad was a single dad. Do you know what I mean? And things like that. So those are kinds of things too, like you're saying, to understand more, but I don't know how you bridge that yet. I don't know how you. Be interesting.
Well, it's pretty
Yes,
broad.
some-
Acceptance of differences, diversity on all levels.
Well, I like the diversity on all.
And that's fine. I mean, like, and I do think, like, obviously I'm not in the classroom every day, so I think that looking to administrators and teachers, if they think it's going on in the classrooms, if they think there's an issue, then, you know, that's fine, but I don't think it's ever wrong to educate and teach kids different.
Even to like, when we used to have parties and we would have a party before the winter break. And parents and volunteers would bring in Santa Claus type things. A majority of our population do not celebrate Christmas. And that's just disregarded.
Okay, that, once again, you guys are way off base, because I've been in the classrooms in these situations, and the kids love it. A lot, we have so many Arabic kids, and they have no, I would Christmas present from Arabic kids. They just enjoy, we would always talk about how they had the same time off, and then they would do the same thing we're doing on Christmas. They would have family
Nancy,
get together.
They would, they may appreciate you and your culture, but how are we, the non-Muslim community appreciating theirs?
Because we talk about it in the classroom. I did all the time.
Well, that's,
And you do
Great to know.
comparisons and you see how the other side lives and the other side, and then you find out how similar, you might have different holidays, but you find out how similar that they correlate. So teachers are doing their job, that's already happening. And it was happening, like I said, 20 years ago.
Because you're a social studies teacher.
Well, yeah. But I mean, it was. I used to teach the three main religions side by side. I didn't teach them separately. And I would have Arabic parents come and tell me, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. That is so nice. Because they saw that we were comparing the similarities and really didn't even look at the differences as much, just so you could see that cross connection of religions. And if you're doing your job properly, these kids should not feel uncomfortable in our school. And from what I know from then, I'm not in the schools now. I'm not saying it was perfect, but it was darn good.
And what I'll say is we definitely have staff who try to make it as inclusive as possible. And I think educators want to do that. We have so many educators in this room. But I also think that there's constantly things coming up that can continue to be trained on.
Sure.
And I think that's important to
I
your
don't
point.
think it needs to be the center of attention. I can be wrong.
No, and I do believe, I mean, if you look at that tweet that went viral where we had,
Oh, with Mrs. Ryan?
yeah, so I'm not saying that it's like, you know, like there's like this huge division. I just think it's always something, I think cultural awareness training is something that everyone needs, as staff and students. So I'm not saying it's something that we have a deficit in. It's just something that I think is constantly evolving, especially when we have such a high percentage of students who are EL.
Okay, what else?
Is that something that's done, like cultural training, like continuously? It doesn't have to be like a big thing, but issues do come up, and like this
Are you
year, a
talking
lot of,
cultural training
like
for whom?
with the staff to help
Like
the
on the
students,
staff, training the students, parents?
training the staff to help the students, because like everyone's home's different. Some parents don't believe in all the same things as others. So just at school where everyone should respect one another. Because like now we have all the like people complaining about teachers asking children pronouns. And I feel like that's important because on the previous 5-year plan, there was something about making everyone feel included.
Right.
And that's very inclusive, and other people don't like that. So it kind of falls on the staff to be that facilitator
Okay,
where, and with the seriousness, where like it is a real issue in people's lives. So even if you don't get it, teachers should be the one facilitating that respect.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll put that as a professional development item for teachers.
Yeah.
Yes. Got it.
I take us in a whole nother way, under curriculum, really creating a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And what we're really looking to do is making sure that no matter what textbook you use or what resources you have, you still have those standards, we still have common assessments that can be used. That is something that we have started on, but it's definitely a huge focus, I know, for us as an administration and as teachers moving forward.
And, yeah, you're right.
Well, that's important because if you have 4 teachers teaching 2nd grade,
Yep.
academic freedom definitely is great, but they still have to have the same goals. So I 100%
Absolutely,
agree
in order
with
to
that.
transition into the next grade.
Yes.
Yeah, and what
And
I,
I'll be ready.
and what we talk about all the time is that you have your standards, you have your learning process to get to those standards, and it's within that learning process that teachers have that academic freedom of how best to reach the students they have in front of them on any given day.
Okay.
I have a question as a non-teacher. So when you guys do stuff like that, then do you compare all the teachers and see if anyone's like really out of the norm falling short? Like if like say you have 4 teachers and 3 of them all scored around the same, if one teacher scored superior or inferior, and then you guys like adjust that teacher's curriculum needs to
So
standard that all
when
others.
we look at things like MAP scores across the district, across grade levels, we look at them both as a teacher and as like individual students to try to determine what is going on. The thing is that you still have to get to those standards
Yeah.
regardless. And it's interesting because one year, let's say you have 4 teachers and one teacher could be like have the highest scores of the year. The next year they're at the bottom. A lot of it depends on the students and,
Yeah.
but it's also, if you see trends with specific people, it's giving them that professional development, coaching them, working with them to get them up.
And that goes to their evaluation. So,
Student growth makes up about 30% of their
So
evaluation.
can we ask about, I mean, like you were saying, I'm not, educator. With the curriculum and everything, it always seems like we're always trying to either reinvent the wheel, or there's always some there's some new snake oil out there.
Well, they
teaching
tend,
us different ways.
in the strategies tend to circle around.
Yeah.
If you're
But is
around
there, I
once-
mean, I guess this is my question, so I'm not necessarily this, but how do people know that their children are being educated? How do you know that, like, when my child goes into this grade, they should come out knowing this?
Well, and that's a great question,
Do you know what I
Tirza.
mean? I mean, I know our state doesn't do that, but you should be able, I mean, technically, you should be able to be like second grade, when you're like, this part, shouldn't you be able to like go Trowbridge and Oakland, be like.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to be, but
If you
it's
can
not.
look on Common Core and if you look up curricular standards, every school needs to be following that level. So it's broken down by grade levels put together for whatever, but if you click on it, then every school should be following those standards. So at a second grade level, all teachers across the state, so if I move to Word, so that's where curriculum comes from. They, you know, it's kind of like that understanding by design concept, that you look at the end goal and then you make your curriculum around that. You don't take a story and decide you want to teach it, and then you want to see what you want to teach and then go. So I think that, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's, all you have to do is, you know,
I guess.
Google state
It's
standards.
like, when we started talking about it, I'm sorry, they're supposed to know their multiplication table, like, third grade, second grade, you know what I mean? They're
well,
looking for more.
there's standards and there's I can statements on the web, on
Okay.
national, you know, like that, I can do this. And that's where schools, and from my experience as being a teacher, develop curriculum. I've written a lot of curriculum.
Maybe
and-
that's what we can talk about, is make sure that our curriculum is geared towards.
Well, and that's exactly, yeah, and Tirza, to take that to the next step, if you remember, February of 2020, seems like a whole different lifetime ago.
Yeah.
That's when our committee presented standards-based grading.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is all tied to that, but that's when a parent can then see, all right, so this semester, these are the standards my child was supposed to meet. Did they exceed it, meet it, or fall kind of behind them? So that's.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I know.
With reference to what you brought up, Tirza, let me just point this out. Like you say, can you go from this district to that district to that district? With reference to the standards, yes. But in light of the philosophy of individualized instruction for the needs of students, if students have mastered those standards in a particular district, the teacher's going to take them to the next level. So, you know, a different districts minimally will be at that, but it could be someplace else too. Because every district has local control. You know, you have to do that, but you also have local control to build on it. We're supposed to be individualizing the students, so we're not gonna say, okay, the standards not done till June. You know, you're gonna keep moving them forward, you know what I'm saying? So that's the only difference you might see, but the standards piece is a common. That's correct.
I know in talking curriculum, and I don't know if we're looking at for something so specific, but it seems like we have had a math deficit, so to speak. You know, where students have really struggled in the district. I know that we're starting new curriculum and new programs and stuff like that, but I still feel like it has to be a high point of focus on how to help improve the education of our students in the area of mathematics throughout all the
Would
grade
you say math
levels.
is probably our worst?
I would say it's an area that we're focusing on the most right now. I mean,
Well, because we've just bought into the number sense. And so that has been something that they were working on last year, not to mention all the different, you know,
yeah.
things that they looked at. I mean, obviously,
Well, and as well as the board approving the hiring of 2 math coaches
Yeah.
in 2019, that unfortunately last year, we had to move back into remote learning, but this year, just hearing the math conversations that are taking place because they are around the buildings it's been huge already. So,
And we added extra time to math
Right.
2 years ago.
Just because you're having more time doesn't mean you're getting accomplishments.
Well, we lost ground last year, there's no way around.
Anyone thoughts for the next 5 years?
Well, we have to keep focus on our facilities, because we have a huge facility plan that we put in motion, so we gotta kind of.
Well, plus there's a space limitation possibility, so. That's something.
And I would just add that that is so tied to finance, especially
That's what I'm
right
thinking,
now,
yeah.
when, I mean, those two right now more than ever for us are so intertwined.
Yeah, and we push forward on a number of things because of the extra finance for the moment.
Well, sometimes what some districts do is this is that time exists, they kind of focus there, so they
That's
say
what I'm
finance
thinking.
and buildings.
Yes.
I know that because of COVID, things have kind of pulled back from the concept of holistic / STEM learning.
Mhm.
I have not, in my personal experience, having children here, seen that dazzle me with my kids. I know that holistic is part of the mission statement that you guys came up with last time. And I still feel like when I look at some of the stuff my child was doing in the STEM classes, I wonder if it's something that still needs to be revamped, focused, looked at
I agree.
as a transition. When my kid is looking at a PowerPoint that has 42 slides to get notes from, I think that even adult is done after 10 slides. So I feel like I don't know if the STEM is doing what it's supposed to, but I don't know if that's because of COVID, because it's supposed to be more hands-on and it just can't, or if it's because we still need like more
So
revamping in that
am I reading
area.
you right, is it more of a STEM evaluation, is that what you're saying?
Maybe, or, you know, just some retraining or something. I know that these labs were put in and I'm just
I don't think
curious.
enough training was done for, they've got a couple really great things to do, but you can't do them every year.
Yeah, I just feel like more training, more, you know, things to go on. I think that we had
They
this
had to make,
idea.
the whole idea we put that STEM in was so that it would be something exciting for people to do, as opposed to that other stuff we did. What was that stuff?
It was like they used to do with the computer lab.
Yeah.
I just idea like this idea of holistic learning where there's so much more hands-on. You know, when I think about the STEM, I'm using that hands-on aspect of it. And I know that with COVID, that may have had a pullback. I get that.
Absolutely, because we only had the STEM classes in a half a year before the COVID.
So
8 months, 6 months.
But then if we're looking at what wasn't done maybe in our last strategic 5-year plan, I that's what and we're trying to think of what should be a focus, then maybe this should still be something
Mhm.
that we're revisiting, you know, as things start to get more open and better.
STEM classes came from our last strategic plan.
No, I know, but keeping them as a focus and maybe retraining people
But
or.
we haven't had a chance to show what they could do because of the COVID situation. They were only up and running in a few months when everything hit, everything went to crap. So it is, I just think it's an unfair comparison at the moment. But I'm not putting down the fact that they should be looked at.
Well, that's what the
Absolutely.
evaluation.
Yeah,
The
there's
second-
nothing wrong with
And the
looking at
training
it.
goes in over here, the
Right.
rest of the training.
There's
Just
nothing
like we
wrong
talked
with
about
looking at it
technology,
and making
too.
sure, what can
What
we
kind
do
of
to make
categories
up
in the
time? I mean, just like the other subjects, what can we do to make up time we lost?
Is it STEM or STEAM?
So,
We have it as STEM. So I'm just looking at our easels where we have growth mindset, Dr. Madden. We have the special ed program, which is very broad. Do we want to include any subcategories in there, or do we want to keep it as broad as we have it?
Well, I mean, and definitely the issues brought up about, you know, being more inclusive to students. And so, you know, trying to meet the needs of more of the community members or more students who are part of the district. But, you know, I don't know that we're not doing that. I think that, you know, that's something that needs to be looked at in general.
See, right now, we have to be specific, because
Okay.
when we do the focus area, that was general.
Okay.
So, you know, what we're doing now is, are you telling me that specificity? This maybe come out as a category, but then you'll know what that category represents based on this discussion.
Well, I know-
Otherwise you don't know.
I know in my time of having children here, I've seen the whole special ed program revamped, and it went from being, I think it's like, I've had positive experiences. I think it has a lot of great changes in it. So so for specificity, I don't know. I actually am interested in the other level of differentiating, I guess like a different, I'm interested in differentiating to meet the needs of all the levels in the class, but also the kids, I sometimes feel like kids who are on the higher end don't get challenged enough. So I'm curious how that's going curricularly for a teacher.
Let's see.
We have to differentiate instruction part, so all students are learning.
But that also children are getting challenged who are on the higher end too. I mean, as a teacher, I think teachers, know, just in my personal life, I know it's like you spend a lot of time focusing on the kids who need extra help, and then you want to make sure that the kids, I have heard community members say that sometimes the kids who are, I guess the higher, need more of a challenge are not necessarily getting that challenge. And so I'd like to see that.
Just because when I was on the board, there was a big, when I first came on, they had gotten rid of all the honors.
They got rid of, gifted is
They
no
wanted to get
longer,
rid of the gifted program. 'Cause
now they
had-
wanna get rid of AP.
Who has AP?
Yeah,
High
yeah,
school.
So as this is evolving, what I'm toying with is, looking at the category, this could be student needs outcomes, or social emotional separate, or it could be climate culture separate, depending how we want to package it. But just think about that as we continue our brainstorm, where that's going.
I think, I don't know if it's culture, but I think another thing we need to really look at, even whether it's finance or anything like that, we also need to look at, the teachers in this district, how we get quality people in here, whether it's the district itself, the income, you know what I'm saying, let's
Get them and keep them.
get them and keep
Is that what you
them.
meant by
Exactly.
climate before though? Is that what you're talking about as part of it?
You know, why?
So professional, like
How we
staffing
keep them here,
climate.
and how we keep them here and want to stay here.
In the past, we had teachers come here and don't leave. Recently, because of the shortage of teachers around the whole country, they are able to go anywhere they want and get the money they want. So, and there's such a shortage. Man, this isn't easy. So that's just a more recent thing. I mean,
Is there a way to
we've always
inspire
had a
people to
lot of
become
teachers
those
that
educators?
stay.
Maybe that's something we need to talk about,
Yeah.
is to inspire have teachers that are there in our schools that encourage, they'll be 5-year-old, I want to teach her just like this or whatever. Do you know what I mean? To have those people that are leaders that make these kids say, hey, I can do that. She was really great. I mean, everybody's got whatever you did. There was probably some teachers and we're like, she's awesome.
You know what?
That's why I want.
There are a lot of kids from this neighborhood that have become
Yeah.
teachers. They don't, just a number of them
That's
that
what I'm
came
saying,
in and teach
But do
you.
we feel that we have those same teachers now?
I do feel like the high school does like a teaching internship program where they're pushing that. I know a lot of high schools are focusing
Yeah,
on
they do
that.
the preschool class, my grandbrother.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? That's the whole thing. It's like, if you have really good teachers there that inspire the children, it's like, wow, you know what I mean? That they can, do the same thing.
Could we expand that though, not only teachers, support staff?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, staff in general.
Good point.
That's the more prevalent as far as. That's use more.
See where this is going, is it an idea? We can also put some of these together.
Oh, yeah, it's just for that.
These are all professional development, those finance buildings, human resources, curriculum, technologies over here. We have technology, we got curriculum.
That's it.
finance, I can't read,
Climate.
Culture, climate, public relations, finance, facilities, technology, curriculum and instruction.
okay, now this one, as I mentioned before, could be in a couple of different,
Some of that could go in curriculum, I think, when we talk about the idea of differentiating, that could probably be curriculum.
For sure.
Writing, I think that could go. And then individual needs of students, I think that goes sometimes to curriculum, if you think about how you can differentiate the levels of a lesson.
yeah, if you did that, then I think you'd want to do something with student outcomes, so curriculum student outcomes or student needs outcomes. You know, the need for social emotional, the needs for accepting diversity in students, to be accepted by peers, for students to be individualized and have higher outcomes. Those are all needs and outcomes. So either you want them separately or package them into.
You can put that in curriculum, all of it.
Pardon me?
You can put that in, yeah.
That's too much to go in the curriculum.
Yeah, but
No,
good,
it isn't.
I feel like those two posters almost, to me, except for, and even the student needs, isn't that all climate though?
Which one is that?
Both of those, isn't that all climate, like social emotional, the climate of how,
You could
Those
package it
together.
that way, yes.
okay,
But how would you, what are you suggesting that heading be?
climate, I guess, climate.
Or social emotional.
We did climate and culture last time, but I think we spilled into social emotional in the discussions. Am I correct? If memory serves me right.
I feel like focusing on the climate is never something that will probably end, I mean, you want, and especially coming off
It's
of,
resurfaced a lot.
Yeah. and because of that, I think, you know, social emotional is, I feel like what we're telling teachers to be paramount with is to read the needs of students and parents and things, and also look at the staff, their social emotional well-being, so I still think it's highly important.
And what about special ed and tied to curriculum? Special ed. Is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yep. I mean, that could.
That's all it's about.
By statistics all the time. Their staff. Those are all designs, I mean, not.
The hardest part is when you start putting more and more in curriculum, how then do you get? Because
The
on
goals
some
that
of
are.
these pieces, you can come up with 5 items, and now you've got like the.
Well, remember, you're the only one that's gonna know these.
Okay.
You follow what I'm saying? I mean, you can bring this up at the table. But the heading is gonna be whatever they're gonna see when they plan. Okay.
Social emotional climate, I mean, that is all something that is being done, it's in the hallways, it's from the administrators, it's from the teachers. And that's everybody working together towards a common end. And it has to do with your teaching, how your discipline in the classroom. I mean, it's all part of that, part and package of all of it.
But are you saying that's curriculum? How? Because when I look at curriculum, I think about the goals in education, and I think about climate and like the way you treat students. I feel like that's a different thing. I feel like forming relationships. Well, of course, you're, you know, it does, but I'm talking about when I talk to a kid in the fall, saying,
What about
well, that's what I'm talking, that's exactly what I'm talking about, this
Maybe
concept of.
maybe that's the category, relationships between the staff together, the social emotional relationships, do you know what I mean, that relationship, the warm pleasant feeling that you should get. I mean, not necessarily, but you know what I'm saying, that's that, I don't know. Maybe that's, is that what you're looking more as like the relationship aspect of it?
Possibly, I just don't know that in my mind it goes under curricular, because when
I
I think
feel the same
curricular,
way
I
you do.
think educational
Academic.
benchmarks and
Yes,
academics.
I think about,
I think social emotional, although, you know, obviously it goes into the classroom, I think it's kind of a separate thing. The idea of like forming, you know, touchstone relationships with a teacher and things like that, so,
Say, what umbrella under student needs and outcomes?
yes.
You know, what does a student need? Well, they need to be satisfied. They need acceptance. I mean, think about all the needs students have, social, emotional health, mental health. I mean, these are all needs, right? Then there's outcomes. One, the individualized instruction, you know, you want them to, all students to succeed, part of one of the core values.
So are you suggesting this is all student needs?
It could be student needs and outcomes.
Okay, so student needs, maybe
I mean, that's
personal,
an idea.
and then
I'm telling
outcomes
you.
would be the education. That's why I'm trying to get where you're going.
Yeah, well, the reason is because I'm seeing, I mean, depending on how strongly you feel about it, would determine whether you wanted a standalone social emotional or a standalone climate culture. We did the standalone climate culture last time, remember? I granted, we have new challenges, not only climate culture, we did that. So the question we can do is, do you want these as standalones or do you want them as student needs? You take all.
Student needs.
I think you can combine them, but we're missing to the fatigue that we see from our staff. The like COVID fatigue and the I'm overrun fatigue.
Would
Yeah,
that go
that
into
would be
human
great.
resources
Oh, I
thing?
see.
Because I guess human resources is now being.
See, now this is
Okay.
another one that I'm throwing your way, is human resources are hiring teachers, keeping teachers and those things, but also training teachers.
Yeah.
And staff
So
support.
therefore, there should be human resources professionals.
Yeah.
You want to keep them, you're gonna train them for your curriculum. And keep them on the cutting edge of instructional practices. So these two go nicely together. Okay, and curriculum is a standalone, finance and buildings, we talked about that marriage. Technology, I pulled out training out of here and put technology training there because it's part of professional development that goes under HR. Right?
Basically, the core of the 5 major groups, it doesn't change very much. But you're constantly tweaking, not only in a 5-year plan, but even as you come upon each year, or sometimes even in the middle of the year, you are tweaking and changing as needs arise. And that's what you should be doing, because different things happen. Like with the trans stuff or, you know, some of this other stuff that's going on now. You have to be able to be ready, and I know Adam and I have talked about that stuff, and, you know, he has some ideas on what to do with some of the things that are coming to a head, you know, you gotta stay ahead of the game all the time. Just like when we would talk about COVID, you know, it's like, as soon as you got past one thing, okay, this is what might happen. These 2 things might happen in the next couple of months, we need to plan for that. And you have to stay ahead of the game, but then it's finance, and that's what the strategic plan is all about, human resources, the curriculum, the finance. You always have to stay ahead of the game the best you can.
Right.
Am I right?
You're absolutely right. Yep. But I will tell you this. See, what you're doing right now is you're setting the foundation.
Right.
Foundation are these focus areas. These are what's in your mind under student needs.
Yep.
When we sit at the table for the 2 days, you'll hear all other kinds of things come out that the teachers are going to say, oh, they also, this is a need of theirs too. You know, and then when that'll surface is something we didn't think about. So that's what will happen at the tables is while you'll keep notes of what you noted under student needs or curriculum or human resource and PD, they're going to add to it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Based on how they see it from their lens.
Or they'll branch from it a little bit.
That's right.
You know,
Yes.
under the same category, and then branch, have sub areas.
And that's the beauty of having a diverse committee of
Exactly.
all different stakeholders. Because they're all looking at it from a different set of eyes.
And I think it's interesting to talk about like on technology, like last time when we talked about technology,
Oh, I've been-
technology was just getting
I see what you're saying.
like, we had enough like, you know, like bandwidth. I mean, you know what I mean, and getting tablets in people's thinking, now we're saying, hey, we got that,
How to
now we
use it
need
appropriately.
Well, now we have all those cameras, those special, you know, we got rear whiteboards, and we have
Yeah.
those special what do you call those things?
No, I think there's been leaps and bounds, but it's how to integrate it. It
Yeah.
went from a whisper to a screen with the one-to-one devices.
exactly.
And, you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, lucky in a sense.
but the idea of having,
Also, can I teach this or relying on that for that?
No,
oh,
it
no,
has
you
to be
can't have
done in a
kids
proper manner.
sitting on a
Exactly,
Chromebook
agree.
all day. I don't think teachers are doing that. I just feel like it is a good idea though for all of us. So I do think we've made leaps and bounds. And I think Nancy, you're 100% right that like some of the things that we're doing are things that are gonna probably be on strategic plans for years because they're always things that are gonna
And they evolve.
have merit and value.
Yes, and they
Yeah.
evolve.
You know, between methodology, strategies, technology, culture, I mean, things changing, you know, norms and everything. Things changing, we have to work with them, not against them, the best as we can. Even if we don't agree, there's plenty of things I don't agree with, like these freaking masks. But, you know, only because I've had 3 shots and done with these masks. But
See,
anyhow,
Last time,
but that's what I mean.
we had climate and culture standing alone, but we added into climate and culture public relations. That's what we did.
Yeah.
last time. So the point is, maybe and what's really on the horizon now, not that climate and culture and importance are very important, but is social, emotional, mental health and well-being and acceptance of students, of peers, peer acceptance, feeling good about themselves, self-esteem. I mean, I'm gonna go down a list that can be a mile long. So the question I have for you is, does one strike out as a need greatly for you as a district that you need it as a separate heading? Or do you think that it should encompass all of them as student needs? And that's the question. The last time we went with climate and culture.
What about something like healthy environment? Or positive environment or something?
Well, they still fall under student needs though. Because if we said, I think that what you're going towards is having just student needs be the category.
Or you could even add outcomes if you wanted, because an outcome is part of what students.
I feel like the
Is
word
to have
student
outcomes.
outcomes is kind of, I would think about grades if I heard that. Student needs for me, I would possibly put all these things in there.
Well, then maybe a way to put the outcomes would be an extracurricular.
I do agree with that, because when I hear
Curriculum and
outcomes, I think
student
about
outcomes.
data. When I hear student needs, I think about social, emotional, like you said, positivity, because we're talking, this is a 5-year plan. Let's be honest, if kids have been impacted, this is gonna keep having a trickle effect for years. So if we don't think that kids are going to still be struggling, you have kids probably right now who are having school avoidance because they're used to being at home and they're having a hard time in the classroom, and this is gonna continue going. So I definitely think it's important.
Yeah, I said like healthy environment, if we wanted to change the connotation of the student needs to something on the positive flip side.
I know what you're, I totally get what you're saying.
And you think that when we say student needs, we're gonna have people saying, oh, we need to have government, you know, as opposed to like what our thought is, how do we guide them towards that?
Well, whoever is in that group then, but I think that anyone would say student needs coming off this pandemic would be, I would be hard pressed that if you had a parent or a staff member in there, they wouldn't think about emotional well-being and reintegrating. I mean, especially smaller kids who have not been in classrooms and worked in groups or dealt, you know, some, I mean, there's some kids who came in, you know, first grade, like this is their first time in the building, you know, like things like that. So I think I would be hard pressed if they wouldn't, but again, who's ever in that room, like you said, we're privy to these lists. We know what our agenda is or
And
what we want.
the reason why I kind of bring this up too is there's an old theory in education, so old. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what that theory says is that until you fulfill the needs of a child in terms of food, clothing, love, what in this chart, they'll never learn. So they want to know, am I going to have a place to sleep tonight? Am I going to have food? Am I going to be loved? And if they're worried about that, they're not going to learn. So this is where this needs thing comes in. And of course, you can address all the needs that kids think about that sometimes inhibit their learning. Am I right?
But this is just like the training that you gave us before, when you have a parent in and you need to make them feel like they are valued. So when they come in and they're hot off the press and they want to argue, this is exactly what you trained us about, you know, that training that we had with you before about.
Yep.
That idea of making someone feel valued and comfortable, and then they're gonna be a positive member.
Yes.
So I feel like it's the same concept.
That would also be important for teachers to
A valuable stakeholder. Yeah.
to help students with by making them feel valued and important. You know, that self-esteem, you know, it's like that. I mean, there's a lot under there. But what I'm saying is I think we have to, I'll be surprised if you put that out there, that your group will not brainstorm those items. I'll be shocked if you not. Would you agree?
Yep.
I think it'll come up. So how about the heading? Do you like the heading? Do you want a different heading? I'm just the first tentative one we threw out there, but we can window dress it any way you like.
Well, this is not to say, but even when you talked about safety being a thing, I think that student safety will fall.
Absolutely, there'll be another one there. Yeah,
So.
you can put that in there too. And another thing too, when we develop the survey, some that we really think are important, we'll ask them, how do you feel about your child, you know, being accepted in school? You know, do you think that's important? Or, you know, satisfaction? You know, we can infuse some questions in there that will elicit responses from stakeholders about those needs, if we want to do that.
In the same realm, like, because we talked about sending out surveys before, are any surveys gonna go out to the students to see like if, like what they think their needs are and if they think their needs are being met? Because their parents might be like, oh, well, that doesn't really matter to me, but they don't know if it actually matters to their child or not, depending on what it is. Yeah.
Yep. I think, I know our social workers do a lot of more informal
Yeah.
surveys, but we could definitely put something formal across the district for that.
Yeah, especially if we're doing like a whole category focusing on student needs, I feel like maybe getting the student's actual opinion on what they need versus what we think they need.
It might, I don't know, I wonder about the concept of survey as opposed to talking to a kid, because if you're talking about smaller children, I don't know that they can conceptualize some of these things that we're talking about, but maybe at the junior high level.
Yeah.
Or at the
I
very
can see-
least, their teachers, asking their teachers what they think their students.
Well, and even if when we sit there during the training and it's more generic at that time,
Yeah.
part of the thing could be making sure we're checking in with them in both formal and informal ways throughout the entire school year. Yes.
Or what you can also do, you know, we're gonna get sample staff teachers on the committee from the various levels. So K-5, 6-8. And what we can do is share with those teachers that are gonna be on the committee what our focus areas of study are and ask them to get data from students on their input on those, so they could bring that to the table. That's another way of doing it.
And the teachers, especially the lower levels, they can talk to the kids and they can
Sure.
get, and they can report it down and go from there, because they're not gonna be able to do a survey in a proper manner. So
I do know I've seen like surveys of like, do you feel respected by other students? Do you feel respected by the staff? Do you feel like that type of thing, I think is probably what you're going for.
Yeah, or
It's
at the
like-
very least, like having the social worker maybe be one of those staff members who then is in this meeting.
Yeah,
That
that
gets
would
to
work,
sit
that would
down
work
and
too.
be in that
we've
category.
had that before.
Yeah, we could have them on the committee.
Yeah,
Absolutely, they could bring it right to the table because they deal with them all the time.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
these are the
nice.
committees that are getting this stuff done before we do the meeting with them, correct?
We'll say that again.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding these committees that you're talking about, is that the ones that are sitting at these tables on these committees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ones that are sitting at the tables on this.
Okay,
it's
so
also-
I don't want to be like, you know, I didn't be downer, but I will tell you that, I mean, we had a lot of people show up to that first one, but I was very disappointed
The follow-ups they do.
that the follow-ups weren't, and I was also disappointed that considering how many people are in this district that are employed by this district, that there were not a lot of them, there were not a lot of stakeholders. You know, I'm really surprised for as many people who have as many opinions about what should be done in the school, that they choose not to let their feelings be heard. So I think us as a school board or whatever really need to talk it up and say, you know what?
Are they
Want your voice
compensated?
heard.
You bring up an excellent
I'm
point,
guessing.
Tirza.
No,
And
nobody.
now that we've been through that once and found that experience true, I think we need to do a little bit more tapping on the shoulders to get the diversity among
Yeah.
the community group. That would be a good, I'm gonna make a call and say, we would love to have you join us.
Yeah.
You know, they're usually very impressed when you ask.
Yeah.
If you send a volunteer thing out.
Yep.
They probably just.
Right.
Well, I was on the PTA and it was really funny. One time couldn't people would
Yeah.
feel much up. I literally.
So I think you
called
just
like
have to
five
make sure you have
people.
that, you have to have an extra sending things out.
Yeah.
Making sure you're represented
Well, it's
there.
much harder to say no to a real person
Real
than it is
person.
No
to-
doubt.
Yeah.
than it is to ignore me
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
As we do, we just try to get those people, you know, we really need your input. We'd really like you know, a personal invitation.
You know,
Right.
and the administrators can make you know, help with that as teachers, as parents pick up kids or drop them off. And, you know, parents come to our schools all the time, so, you know, and even if it's just dropping kids off, they're always talking to our staffs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they can encourage them too.
Haley?
Another question. So are most of these people invited?
So,
that showed up?
so I asked, as we've been preparing this, I asked Laura to pull the list that we had before.
Yeah.
And you're right, we had a really, really long list those first 2 days. And by the end, there was like 3 or 4 people on there.
Yeah.
And some of those people on the list have changed positions, like they wouldn't necessarily be invited for the same reason.
Yeah.
So that's the type of thing we're going to be going through over the
Or
next
they
week.
moved to high
Yes.
school.
And then do
Yeah.
like we invite people, like, do I give you,
I-
just because
if-
I don't know
If,
personally. do I
if
give
you
a
knew
list?
someone that you felt was really important, I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of look at the overall picture and really try to determine
Yeah.
who we
Because-
invite.
My problem with this list is, I know a lot of
Mhm.
people on here, and while they're great people, they're good at their profession. Some of them have school kids who are like really old, and so it's like, I don't know how much they would know about the district. Or people who have kids who actually never went to these schools and went to other schools nearby, but.
Yeah, and I think
the same.
sometimes that's okay to have some of those voices to understand why. Like,
Yeah.
was there a
And the
reason?
older kid, and the older people who have older children, it's a good way because then they can say, yes, you guys are preparing. The children should go to Richards. My kids were prepared. Like I remember, like when we were talking about English, Spanish. Guess what? Spanish at this, at Finley, the way that it was not preparing children for it Richards.
Yeah.
And that was something that nobody really knew because they really thought that the program was like, no. It
Yeah.
wasn't worth what it was to do.
And I think the key really is to just get as a diverse
Mhm.
list as possible, as well as people who are committed to
Yeah.
voicing their opinions there. I think that's really important.
And just
Right.
because some of these parents and or community members send their kids to Our Lady,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They're people that are interested in the community overall.
Yeah.
So even if they're old, my kids are all out of here.
Yeah.
My kids all live here. But I've still been on the school board for how many years? And all the time I've been on here, my kids haven't been in the school. They already were out. They were out in Richards by the time I did this. So it doesn't matter, it's just people that.
Yeah, it's important to have a diverse group. I mean, even
Yeah.
those that don't have kids at all.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
That's a very important group
Yeah.
because remember, they pay taxes.
Yes, they do.
And it's great to get them in to educate them on the importance of how a quality school enhances their real estate value. They have
Exactly.
Great
Yeah.
opportunity. And then have them go out and tell everybody else.
Yep.
But
So,
Bailey,
yeah, you
I
want
see your
to-
point,
Yeah.
100%. That
It just-
there's a lot of people who are very vocal in the community on all different levels, and I think that these
Yes.
people who have concerns should be able to voice them
Yeah.
and be a part of it
and
get an understanding.
And do it in a
It's not an
in a
automatic.
positive way.
positive,
In a positive
helpful
way.
way as opposed to a.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's this idea of like, you know, if you wanna have change, be part of change.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Be part of it.
It's like voting.
You know what I think is interesting now, now that we've gone through all this type of stuff, look at this
Mhm.
light bulb again. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, we have one going, two. It is collaborative, inclusive, student-centered, student safety, high expectations of everyone learn.
It's all but the buzzwords.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, all this stuff
Yep.
is back.
Yeah, that's true. Again,
If we're gonna leave student needs, could we put the well-being of staff over under
Sure.
human resources?
yes.
I
'cause it
think
is.
maybe Joy had mentioned staff support.
Yeah.
Good suggestion.
And then under technology, I think we have made such advancements in technology over the last 5 years. I think it needs a little bit more. My suggestion would maybe be incorporating communication under that.
Under what?
Under technology or with technology.
Can you say more about that, Ken?
I'm sorry.
Can you say more about what you mean? by
Yeah, you
communication?
know, our schools all communicate with our parents in different ways.
Yeah.
One might be Dojo. I don't know what
No, I brought
it
this up before, the
Yeah.
18 different
One-
ways, remind,
Right,
whatever.
one might be school messenger. And then we have a lot of, our parents, we're doing our best at communicating in Arabic and Spanish. So I think just communication needs to be a little bit more.
Everything needs to be
Yeah.
streamlined and
In
universal.
here.
Again, it's just a thought.
Universal communication.
It should,
Yes.
you
You
know.
know.
In more category.
Under technology.
Because yeah, I agree, like you said.
There's too many
universal
apps
lines,
and-
Yeah, there's a new one too.
And then we got teacheries, that you gotta
So
do that kind of thing.
universal communication with the community slash parents.
Yeah.
It should be done within the realm of.
Yeah.
I brought that up a long time ago, how some teachers use Quest Dojo, other things, and I think it's confusing when you get.
Mhm.
So if you have multiple kids, you can get it from multiple sources.
Yeah, well,
How many different apps do you have on your phone?
Oh, I have, there's so many, I have,
Plus you have probably Team Snap too, right?
no, I do not have Snap. I have Dojo, I have Remind, I have another new one that I just got, besides Game Changer for baseball, but Band is another one too, Band. So I definitely have all the vehicles of communication, plus email.
Yeah.
Text messages?
And there is one, Remind, Teacheries too, so yes, there
Yeah,
is a
remind, I know
one.
my daughter was doing dance and I had to give her a little, I'm like, okay.
Oh, because the grandkids, I have Game Changer and a few others.
So let's just make sure you're comfortable. Why don't we debate this? So are you comfortable with that heading? Or would you want to encompass those areas?
Okay.
Anything else that you can think of?
No?
So what I will do now, is I'll take a picture of each easel before I leave, and Adam, if you can just make sure you save these.
Yes.
Just roll them up. We're gonna save the easels too when we do our work. Maybe Lori can store them somewhere.
Yeah, she will. Yep.
And then I will type it all up. And we'll get it out to everyone. In other words, not just the categories, but all the items mentioned by you in the brainstorm. In a category. And then the next thing I'll do then is start working, this is taking a while, on a rough draft of a survey. Okay. Then we have to work with the technology guy to get that put into his format. Once we finish that, to get that done the web.
Andrew, little video.
What's it? Yeah, the video, I think.
That's cute.
It's a good video, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quick. 2 minutes. We get done with it.
Well, when you're asking for volunteers too, you can always do an embedded link, because I noticed it was an MP4, you can
Yes.
just add the link in the email.
Click right
That
on
goes home from here.
Yeah, you could.
Just click right on it instead of having to navigate the website.
Yeah, you could. Okay,
Well, thank you, Dr. Madonia.
you're welcome.
This is a very good
Thank you.
exercise. I am gonna go ahead, if we do not have a need to adjourn a closed session, but if we can get a motion to adjourn. Better with this so Lori can do it clearly.
Double joy.
Okay,
I
all right, Ms. Joy,
No, not at all.
I.
Ms. Labadze,
I.
Mrs. Lammle,
I
Enjoy working with you.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at 8:30 on the dot.
Wow.